Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Gwendolyn Reese, and I am the High Priestess of Theophania. This is our Foundations of the Craft course. We are in Module 3, and this is the Praxis section. Now, if you are watching this video and you have not watched Module 3, the theory section first, I'm going to strongly encourage that you go do that before you move forward with the Praxis, because especially in this one, we are tying very strongly the theory of some of the topics that we went over into the praxis, and it's going to be more difficult for you and you just won't get as much out of it if you don't watch the theory video first. But now with that, let's go ahead and get on into it. So in this particular section, I want to go through some of what we have done before. So our overall goal of this course, of the Foundations of the Craft course, is regardless of whether or not you decide that you want to petition for Theophania or to explore an assembly of the Sacred Wheel Coven, of which, like I said, Theophania is a part. The idea here is by the end of this course, you will be able to have a good, stable, personal practice, even if you have never done any of this kind of stuff before. So let's talk about what it is that we have done in the Praxis sections. We have established methods for communicating with the parts of yourself that don't talk. That's really important as a baseline of magical practice. We also have created methods for consciously connecting to your environment and drawing power from the universe. Methods for doing internal alignments and bringing all of the aspects of yourself into full power. We have talked and gone through, you should have been practicing some of your methods of spiritually and energetically purifying, cleansing yourself and your environment, and methods for protecting yourself and your environment through such things as shielding and other kinds of protection magic. So that's where we are thus far. Now, in this section, we're going to work on some basic energy work. Now, here in the very, very beginning, introduction is where I said, the people that are actually taking this course with me, Theophania, we will be getting together in person at some point, and that there are pieces of what we're going to go over in this praxis section that really you need to have that immediate feedback. This is one of the main ones. However, I am a really, really big believer in not allowing perfection to be the enemy of the good. So what we're going to work on today is we're going to talk through various places where you can begin working on this. If you happen to be so fortunate as to have someone else that you are living with, that you can do some practice with, awesome. If not, we're going to go through some techniques that you can use to just start trying to work on this yourself. And then, like I said, at some point, for energetic work in particular, you really do want other people there to help you. It is a lot easier. Okay, so we're going to do basic energy work. We're going to talk about experimenting with how you sense energy, visualizing, shaping energy, feeding and determining the quality of the energy, start feeling and determining the quality of the energy, and then sending energy. These are all some basic stuff. And we're going to do a creation of a container for magic. In other words, we're going to go through how to do a circle that's really a sphere that can be a container for your magic. We're also going to work on getting to know the elements. It's a large part of what we talked about. So this vibration stuff and the elements that we talked about in the theory, this is where it's coming into actual practice. And then I'm also going to give you instructions on how to open and close gates. And like I said, a lot of this you can practice on your own. If you have someone else that you can practice with, that's great. A lot of this really does require kind of having some in-person part, but you can work on your own. Plenty of people do, and that is better than nothing, but at some point we'll get some feedback. All right, so sensing energy. I want you to, and I should also say in this one more than others, I'm going to encourage you to hit the pause button and stop and actually do and think about things. Okay, so for sensing energy, I want you to think about a time in which you picked up the energy in a place. And this can be where you walked into some place, often because we are often more immediately aware of things that feel like dangerous or something like that. It's just a survival thing. That's often what we think about, but it can be someplace that's full of very joyful energy. But I want you to go back and think about some time in which you walked into a place and you didn't know anything about it, and you immediately felt the energy of that place. Maybe it was a conference room where you walked in, you didn't know anything, but there was all sorts of underlying just stuff where it felt like you got kicked in the gut, whatever that is. So as you go back and you try to remember and recall and relive that experience, where did it hit you in your body? And when you think about it, was it like a gut punch? Did you feel like the hairs on the back of your neck? There's all sorts of different ways, and we all have slightly different how we feel these things. But if you can remember, how did it feel in your body? Where did it hit you in your body, and how did it feel? And what I'm going to strongly encourage you to do is make a conscious effort to stop and sense, like from now on, stop, especially as you're learning, stop, sense, and pay particular attention. Where is this hitting me in my body? And what does it feel like? And I personally think, especially, I mean, I keep a journal, but I think especially, actually, I have a stupid number of journals. I keep several journals, but keeping notes on these things, especially as you are learning them in your own body. As we talked about in the theory section, you're going to find that you experience things in other of your vehicles when you're active on those planes of existence. But in my experience, some of that still translates pretty closely in terms of how it feels, but like translated up an octave or up several octaves. Okay, so that's just one thing, is to recognize that you're already doing this. You know, there are times when you're just like, I don't like this, you know, and that's a very, very deep kind of sensing, and it's real, and it's that you're picking up on the energy. All right, so now we're going to play around with some other stuff. The other thing that I want to point out is that we sense energies in different ways. And that while there are some people who can just look over there and see everything, that's actually not normal, even amongst witches. You know, most of us don't have that kind of clear sight without like going into trance or doing whatever. That's really not typical. Many of us sense things in very different ways, and you may not be visual at all. That doesn't mean that you're not sensing. And so what I kind of want you to just experiment with is also like, how is it that you sense things? So we're going to play some with tactile energy here. Take our hands, and I'm going to suggest that one of the first things you do is like sensitizing your hands. Just rub them together. You're rubbing the palms together. So this gets them really good and sensitized. It also builds up some energy. And once you've done that, then, because we're probably alone right now, I'm going to suggest that you give like a living thing, plant, animal, whatever, another person if they'll play with you, and move your hand very slowly towards it and recognize when you feel its energy field. For this plant, I feel it right here. So, you know, if you need to resensitize, then like move in and just be paying attention. And there will be a moment in which you'll feel the edges of its energy. Feel it where you feel it in your palm, feel it how it feels. And it will feel different for different people. And that's kind of, you know, this is the etheric energy of that plant is what I'm picking up here. And I encourage you to play around with this, you know, do different plants, if you can get a cat to sit still, if you've got one, whatever. And then once you've done that, get like a crystal or a rock and try to feel where that energy is. And then some of what you can do and like get a magical item. If you've got a magical item or something that is sentimentally special to you, try all of these different things. So I want you to like try to figure out what it feels like for you, feeling where the energy is. And then also anything that you can tell once you've got like, okay, I'm feeling that it's there and that I am capable of feeling that it's there, and you'll be able to do this. Even if you're like, oh, I'm a lead head, I mean, you'll be able to do it. It's okay. Just feel if you're not feeling it, resensitize and go more slowly. The other thing then is once you've done that, like think about like what's the quality of it feel like, and just allow yourself to speak whatever it is, just describing it, and just trust your description. Like don't overthink, just like what are the words that are coming out to you, and thinking about that. Okay. And like I said, I strongly encourage you to play around, plant, animal, person, whatever you got, whatever living thing you have available to you. You can go outside and do this with trees, crystal or rock, like experience what that is. And then, once you're able to feel the edges of it, then you can like try holding a crystal or a rock and just, what does it feel like? And just experiment and trust yourself. And then, like I said, a magical item or a special item, and just see what you get. And mostly what I want you to be doing is paying attention to how you are perceiving it and how it feels in your body. How does that feel? And then, like I said, play around when you're out, and part of this is just like, which is hard to do, remembering to pause and just ask yourself, like when you're walking into a room, what does it feel like in there? Just ask yourself. Okay, so that's sensing. And so that's one bit of homework. And like I said, we could play around with this more if we were in person, but you're going to have to go off and do these things on your own. So now let's get into visualizing. So we'll start with the ye old ball of energy in your hands. Sensitize your hands again. And then I want you to imagine, and like really, it's kind of like a will-oriented imagining. It's like you're pushing energy into your hands. You're pushing it in between your hands. And you're pushing the energy in, and you're pushing the energy in, and you're pushing the energy in, and you're paying attention to what it feels like. And you can like feel the ball, feel it. And then once you have that, one of the ways that you're going to know that you really have it, so you feel like it's there, and you're probably like, maybe I'm making this up if you're not used to doing this sort of thing. Then what you're going to do is you're going to try to compress it. And as you try to do that, you're going to hit resistance if you've done it right. So you're going to like hit resistance, and you're going to compress it, and you're going to try to, and it's really, I did a good job. It's really hard to like get it down and get it to where it fits like that. And that's good, vital energy. And then I'm going to actually take that, and I'm going to put it, for me, I'm going to put it in my solar plexus as a bit of additional energy. All right. Then I want you to try this entire thing again, but try doing it and making it a particular color. And see if you can see that color. See if you can see in your mind's eye, which doesn't necessarily mean that you're seeing with these eyes. It's kind of like, if you close your eyes and you see like the screen of your mind kind of thing. And sometimes if you get used to it, you can superimpose that on what you're seeing, which is really ultimately what you want. But however it is that you see, but it is unlikely, unless you are one of those people that is super visually oriented, it's unlikely you're going to see it with your eyes, but that's okay. That doesn't mean you're not seeing it. Seeing it with inner sight. All right. Once you get good at that, then I want you to play around with sending energy through your fingers. And basically, you can do this in two ways. You can, well, two ways that I know of. There may be other ways of doing it. So one of them is you can see it literally flying out of your fingers, which is fine. The other is that you see it at the target of the destination, and you are like, it's almost like virtual reality where you're like controlling it from here and manifesting the energy, like to manifest it over there for sending it. And what I'm going to recommend, because hey, it's not a bad thing to do, is to send blue flames through your fingers and trace the invoking earth pentagram on your doors and windows. This is never a bad thing to do. It's never a bad thing to strengthen. So I have included a drawing here of the invoking earth pentagram. So you start, it's basically, those are related to the elements. So, you know, you're going spirit down to earth, fire, air, water, and then back up to spirit. So you're, yeah, it's basically going back down through the elemental kind of pattern, but you're starting spirit down to earth. So you're bringing spirit down to earth, and then you're going backwards. Sorry, I did it backwards. I always like the banishing. So yeah, so earth, water, air, fire, spirit. So I'm going to suggest, so you do that one backwards, comes down. So that's, sorry, by backwards, I'm sorry. What I should be saying here is that there's the order of elemental descent from the mantles of density. And what you're doing here is you're bringing spirit down to earth and then kind of walking backwards, back up. So it's bringing spirit down to earth. Okay, invoking earth. The banishing is where you take earth and you take it back up to spirit, and then you walk back down through fire, air, water, earth. Okay, anyway, see the blue flame, and by this I mean it's like the blue flame that is coming out of like in a fire, like the little blue that's right around the wick, the hot part. That's what you're seeing coming out. That's the witch fire, and just experiment with that. Then, you know, I'm going to suggest that you play around with some shaping of energy. So one thing I'm going to suggest that you do is that you close your eyes and you kind of get yourself into calm space, get yourself into a place where you tell yourself that you are now seeing correctly with your eyes closed, and then pay attention to, like, go in your imagination from your head all the way to your toes, seeing any place where there may be any gaps, any like tears or any leakages in your aura. And we almost all have some, because we almost always do. And then when you see any, I want you to push together in between your hands some of that energy, just like we've done before, and then imagine rolling it like putty and sealing those areas, and just pay attention to that and what it feels like. And then another way in which you can shape energy is you can imagine different shapes, just geometric shapes, and filling them, like see them in front of you and fill them in this mind eye. And like I said, you can do this with your eyes closed and see it on the screen of your mind. You can do it with your eyes open and just like superimpose, like you're doing augmented reality, and see it there. But see these shapes and fill them with energy of a color that you choose. And I would recommend that you start with like a sphere, then a cube, and then a tetrahedron, which is the 4 faces. Now, I will say for me, I had a difficult time doing some of the geometric shapes because I needed to get them into my actual memory banks better. So I bought a set of solid platonic solids. They're like little cubes in the shapes of all the platonic solids. And I had to work with them to get them into my like data banks of my head before I was able to do that. I had like some sort of a block on some of the geometric figures. So I am now able to do that, but I had to play around. So that's something that, you know, you can experiment with, but at least the sphere and the cube, most of us can envision that pretty clearly. So play around with some shaping of energy. And then the other thing that I'm going to recommend that you play around with is the quality of the energy. So often, often the quality, at least in my experience, is related to the color. And so I'm just going to suggest that you experiment with that. Experiment with putting energy out there in different colors and seeing and keeping some notes of like, well, what does it feel like? So the blue fire of that flame is the most common color for magic, and I'm calling it the witch fire. That's that, like I said, it's that blue, but it's specifically that blue that's in the flame. And that's what we use a lot. But, I have found like ice blue can be very numbing. There's green often encourages growth, and then just play around. And if you're with someone else, you can play around and test yours, they can test theirs. It's kind of a fun game, but there's a number of different ways in which you can use colored energy. There's particular kinds that are kind of cutting, so just like experiment with that. And then sending energy, again, you can do this in person or at a distance. And basically, it's really in a lot of ways what I just said. There's the way in which you can see it on the screen of your mind. And that's like where you close your eyes and you see that and you're pushing the energy, but you do have to, it can't just be imagining them. You're feeling the energy going to them. You're feeling that, and that works. There's the in person, in which you can actually see it coming out of your hands, or like I said, you can do the basically like the kind of augmented reality. I'm playing the controls over here and I'm seeing it happen over there. And so it's really pretty similar, honestly, if you can imagine and visualize the person at a distance, then you can use really the same techniques that you would be using in person. Especially the kind of like, if you think of that augmented reality, that's been really helpful, I think, for magic, because it's kind of how we worked anyway. And seeing it like well done in sci-fi movies now, you're like, that's it, that's what we've been doing. So it can just help you imagine more, because that's the aspect. The imagination is actually the aspect of self that's getting a lot of this done. The imagination doesn't mean that it's false. It's like an aspect of our minds. Okay. So once you've played around and you feel like, okay, I'm getting some of this energy, I'm getting the hang of this, then I'm going to suggest that you go ahead and begin creating magic space if you haven't done that before. And basically, it's casting a circle, but it's really more of a sphere. So you begin in the east and you send witch fire out of your dominant, that blue flame out of your dominant hand, and walk sunwise in a circle around whatever your practice area is. So you're sending the energy out and you're seeing it becoming a sphere. So you're putting yourself inside a globe of this witch fire. And then when you've gone the full circle, you can check to see if it is a full sphere when you're on the inside. And if not, using kind of a similar technique to plugging up the hole in your aura, send energy and plug up any holes that you see. And feel the energy and the flavor of your own magic. Now, this can be part of the reason it's useful to work with other people is this can be quite hard, because it's kind of like asking a fish to be aware of the water it's swimming in. I mean, you are swimming in your own energy all the time. And so therefore, it can be really helpful to have someone else be like, oh, this is what it feels like to me, and to do that for others. So when you are casting your circle, you got your sphere up, then just know. And if you want to say something, say it. This is keeping my energy focused and keeping all unwanted energies out, because that's really what it's doing. And then whenever you're done with whatever it is that you're doing, because once you put something like that up, you want to take it, you want to let it go back down. So the way in which the assembly does is we start back in the east and we go around sunwise again. So we don't really take it down. We go around sunwise again and allow the entire thing with all of its magic and all of its power to sink into the earth in order to assist in the re-enchantment of the earth. It's a gift at that point. It's a gift and a sacrifice. So we don't dismantle and banish usually. There's rare circumstances, like depending on what it is. If you don't want whatever that is going down into the earth, then maybe you don't do it that way. But for most of our magics, we want to use that power to bless the earth. So we go back around sunwise and see it go down. Okay. So that's all the energy stuff. And I'm sorry that we can't actually do more of it together, but that's got some work. And, if you go through this and do pieces of it at a time, that'll be good to do. So getting to know the elements. I'm going to suggest that you spend at least 1 week per element. And I'm really talking about the main 4 here. And make it a point to observe the element that week, including how it arises in you. And I'm going to recommend that you reach out with the intention of relationship building and do at least one journal entry as part of this, considering the element, and write down as full a list as you can of the descriptors. How are you experiencing it? Like what are some of the descriptions of it? The images that you get, and any gifts the element can give you or can give any magic, because that's going to be part of what you then know that you can call on that element for. And then I'm going to suggest, now that you've figured out how to do the circle, the sphere, that you do a ritual in which you cast the container, and then you open the gate for just the one element that you're focused on and call it into the circle with the intention of getting to know it better. So opening the gate. So you go around. The way I'm going to recommend that you do it for this is to go ahead and get the entire sphere up and then go to the quarter. So that would be air is in the east, fire is in the south, water's in the west, earth is in the north. Go to one of them and then call to the element and ask it and the elementals to be present. And then to scribe an invoking earth pentacle, which is what I just suggested that you go do on your doors and windows, in blue fire. So inscribe that. And then once you're seeing that there in blue fire, insert your hands into it. I mean, the way I do it is I go in like this and then go like here, and then push it aside, making the gateway open. Okay. And then once it's open, you can bid them hail and welcome if that's your thing. But the big thing here is to call and allow the elementals and the elements to be present. And then spend some time feeling that energy. Ask questions. So I'm going to recommend that you have your notebook in there and note what kind of answers arise in you. Like, don't second guess yourself. If I'm like, air, tell me about the nature of mind, whatever comes up into my mind, that's going to be the medium in which it's going to be answering me. So I'm just going to trust it and write it down and then take a look later and see if it makes sense. So just do that. And then at the end, you're going to thank the element, you're going to thank the elemental, and then you're going to close it. You're going to go back to that gate. You're like, thank you. And now we're going to end this, and tell them that you're going to close the gate. And then again, what you do then is the witchfire pentacle of banishing, which is you start in earth, the earth one, and you go like this. I've given you the directions. So in that way, you are seeing it close. You find wherever the edges of that gateway are, close them, announce the gate is closed, and then go around again sunwise, seeing the entire thing go down. And that is going to be my suggestion as to what you do for your practice. And what this will do then is that you will add to your toolkit the ability to create really what you've just learned how to do. If you do all 4 of the gates, is that you've learned how to cast a circle, you've learned how to create a boundary, and you've learned how to open the gates and invite the elements in. And in addition to that, you've learned a whole bunch of basic kind of trying to check your own energy, sensing, as well as shaping energy, which can be used in all sorts of different things. So again, going back to what are the things that you've learned, if you go through at this point a basic Wiccan ritual, you have learned how to check in with yourself and how to communicate with yourself. You have learned grounding and centering, which is what we do as a preliminary to pretty much every ritual. You've learned how to purify yourself and protect yourself, which often is also part of a ritual as kind of preliminaries. And then you have learned how to create the sacred space and take it down. So to create the container, and then what goes on in the midst of that is highly variable depending upon the working. So that's a large part of what you've got there is your basic kind of framing around any kind of ritual or magical practice that you can then use, because the casting of a boundary is both protective and it is also a container so that the energy just doesn't like run all over the place. Okay, so thank you so much, and we'll be back in the future with Module 4.